Today, you see a provost responsible for the success of the students, faculty, staff, leadership. But in 1968, I was a latchkey kid in inner-city Montreal, hanging out in a set of rooms, stripped down, over a grocery store, where there was a jukebox, a ping-pong table, and a pool table. There were many, many kids there. We were immigrant kids. We were the children of immigrants from Tunisia, from Morocco, from Eastern Europe, and we hung out and we danced. Now, Montreal has a winter, as you probably could imagine, and so that's what we did all winter. We danced to that jukebox, and we learned how to become friends and supporters and turf warriors and to be brave in the world. With working parents, I learned how to emulate practices that were coming from my friends' parents as well. I had extraordinary parents, humble, working very, very hard to make a life for my brother and for me in the world. I learned how to study from my friend's mother, who was an elementary school teacher, and in grade 1, she told us what we should do. Yes, grade 1, that would be 6 years old. In high school, I had friends whose parents were activists, and from them, I learned how to listen, to challenge, to hold my own. I'm not sure I held my own so well, but to hold my own. Later, I would learn how to raise my own children from my friends. Fast forward, I'm 17, in college in engineering, and I met the most extraordinarily brilliant people I had ever met. And they were amazing, and they were doing all of their own kinds of work. And I could see how I could connect them together. And they could perhaps join mechanical engineering with electrical engineers. It was amazing. It was a candy store for me. And when people asked me, hey, what do you want to do when you grow up? When the shock value of saying, I want to be a lunar architect wore off, I said, I want to be the head of a think tank. I was 17. I don't know if I knew what a think tank was, but I certainly couldn't imagine what its future would be. But I did know how to connect one person's genius to another at a very, very early age. And perhaps it came from movement itself. Well, after finishing architecture and engineering, and I practiced in architecture, I realized I actually wanted to be in the academy. So I went back to graduate school, I became a faculty member, and in first-year design school, I met another extraordinary genius, Ken Warner, who taught first-year design in a way I could never have imagined. And he understood with me that our students perhaps didn't really understand how quarter-scale models and quarter-scale drawings actually made a difference in space, in real time. So we started to build large-scale installations, and we built them downtown. And people from the community, artists, action artists, martial artists, basketball players, said, can I play in them? Can I rollerblade through there? Can I skateboard through there? And we said, sure. And all of a sudden, a new thesis emerged. And we started to work with a philosopher, John Schumacher, another extraordinary faculty member in my life. And we started to look at the difference between space in the making and ready-made space. Not the Duchamp ready-made, but ready-made space is space like this. Space you walk in the door and you know exactly what to do. You sit down. Space in the making is space that evolves over time. So a project started. I started to work with a dance company in Troy, New York, Ellen Sinopoli Dance Company. And we began to design a set of structures that engaged the audience in a very different way than you are, for example. So these floors moved. The dancers were on them. They moved one way, the floors moved the other. The audience is standing. So they actually have to recede as those platforms would come near them. The entire environment became something where the space itself was evolving with the nature of inhabitation. Later on, we designed another project, Spill Out, also in upstate New York, in various cities in upstate New York. And this was a large structure covered in spandex bands, in which the dancers would perform. Well, you know what spandex is like. It's elastic for a lot of its life, but it's not elastic forever. And those of you who you're running shorts, eventually they kind of give. Well, of course, I have a lot of engineers in this audience, and you know what happens when something actually becomes plastic, yields, breaks. These dancers had to be aware of each other's bodies and the material itself. You can imagine rehearsing summer to winter in an unheated gas holder house. The materials themselves shifted daily. They had to be aware of how their bodies were in touch with the next body. Think about it with respect to leadership. You have to be aware of the context. You have to be aware of the materials. You have to know who the genius is right next to you. If they are not aware of each other's body, one person is going to be thrust out of this vertical trampoline, and the project fails. So the constant awareness and building of trust amongst the players is critical. The project had another evolution, a part of the project we didn't even recognize could happen, the shadows on the walls, and a whole other set of images emerged. The dance became a complex interaction of the audience. Where do I look? What do I do? What should I behave with? And the piece itself. The project moved from destination to destination, from Saratoga Springs to Albany to Troy, and different things emerged over time, and we had to adjust the project based on those conditions. Another move. I'm now the Dean of Architecture and Allied Arts at the University of Oregon. One of the things that I was lucky enough to do was to find the best dance company of every town I was in and work with them. And in this case, it was Danceability, with the choreographer, Alito Alessi, an extraordinary man who realized that the variability in all of our bodies was something critical to any kind of experiment around movement and space. At the same time, as I was working on this project with Alito, we were also, in my day job as dean, developing a program in product design. A piece of that program was on adaptive athletes, athletes who had returned from the war, wounded warriors, and they were different than when they had entered the war. They may have been missing a limb. They may have actually developed some neuropathies, and they wanted to be Paralympians. So two territories were evolving. Some would say contested territories. The one of thinking about what is it like to design for a body to become superhuman, and another to think about the body engaged in space the way that we use it. One about fixing the body, so that sort of like, I don't know, mine, perhaps not, but making it more of what we would expect, healing the body. The other, of course, is taking whatever the body can do and actually infiltrating the current culture, the social context. One about pragmatics and one about performance. This is what Sarah Hendren would call the difference between the user-friendly, and the poetic. In fact, that contested territory is exactly where you want to be, thinking about the relationship between the prosthetic, the changing of the body itself, and understanding the larger context in which we all sit, and that the variability itself should begin to infiltrate the way that we think about all of us together. As we designed the same prosthetics, we were looking at Danceability's community, and we started a program that would ultimately become Don't Leave Me, with people who had very, very different bodies, cerebral palsy. Karen would come to every one of our rehearsals. She had lost her leg to cancer and her pelvis as a child. She could fold herself into a box 2 by 2 by 2. I can tell you, that's not happening with me. Might be happening with some of you. And some of our performers, 6'2", 200 pounds, not so easy either. But because she was at every rehearsal, we actually began to create the structures around her body. Now, this structure took Spill Out one step farther in terms of thinking about trust. The structure itself was not stable without occupation. The hand grips of the individuals actually built the nature of the structure. The structure itself totally unstable without the musculature of the bodies being totally aware of where everybody else is. If one grip let go of a joint, the structure would fall. Hence, Don't Leave Me. As people actually lift their legs off the ground, that structure is the most unstable at that moment. If they don't feel the force of each other's body in the structure will topple. This is not any different than we think about leadership. The issue of feeling the force of the people that you work with every day, recognizing their abilities and how you work together is absolutely critical. So today, I am the head of a think tank. After all, what is a university but a think tank? I could never have been here without the wisdom and the hand grips of many, many others. As the child of working class and extraordinarily humble, wonderful, forward-thinking parents, I learned early how to feel the force and rely on the team. Thank you.